Hello, everyone. Tonight we are drifting deep into the humid shadows of prehistory to where the water never quite stops moving and the mud remembers everything. You're standing at the edge of a dark, forgotten swamp. No flashlight, no Wi-Fi, just a wall of chirps, croaks, and a single set of eyes blinking slowly beneath the algae. That's not just any reptile watching you. That's a crocodile. And not just any crocodile. This one has been around since before humans had houses, before writing, before pyramids. It has outlived kingdoms, comets, and your favorite brand of snack chips. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I always like knowing where my little swamp dwellers are hiding out. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the edge of a marshland, the kind that smells like rotting lotus roots and something older you can't quite name. There's no sign telling you what year it is, but judging by the lack of buildings, roads, or even pants, you're somewhere between the late Triassic and the birth of indoor plumbing. Something shifts in the water, slow, heavy, and entirely without apology. It's a crocodile. And while you probably wouldn't last 5 minutes out here this thing, it's not just surviving, it's thriving. Imagine this. Empires are still a twinkle in human ambition. The sun climbs over what will one day be North Africa, warming a braided delta. Fish glitter in shallow channels. On one riverbank, a few humans chip obsidian trying to invent a better way to cut meat. On the other bank, the crocodile doesn't care. It blinks once. That's the entire opinion it has of your species. Historians still debate whether early human settlements near rivers were a blessing or a buffet for crocodiles. What's certain is that as we built villages and eventually cities around rivers, these reptiles already had a front row seat. The Nile, for example, wasn't just a source of life for ancient Egyptians, it was a crocodile superhighway. Imagine you're bathing under the morning sun, rinsing off a hard day of pyramid building, and from behind a reed, well, let's just say spa day is over. The ancient Egyptians both feared and worshipped crocodiles. Sobek, the crocodile god, represented fertility in the military because nothing says secure food production like a god who might eat you. Temples were built. Mummified crocodiles were buried with care, and priests kept sacred crocs in special pools. It's one thing to respect your predators, it's another to put jewelry on them. But the crocodile doesn't know it's a god. It doesn't know about empires or religions or taxation without representation. All it knows is the temperature of the water, the flicker of scales, and the exact moment to strike. No drama, no speeches, just physics, patience, and dinner. By now, you're realizing something: this creature isn't just old. It's ancient in the way mountains are ancient, but unlike mountains, crocodiles move. Slowly, precisely. They've seen the land change color, seen the forests turn to dust, and the stars rearrange themselves. And still, they lie beneath the waterline pretending to be nothing at all. Odd fact for you: crocodiles don't chew. Ever. They swallow chunks whole and let acid do the hard part. Their stomachs are so corrosive they can digest bones, hooves, and the dreams of lesser reptiles. So if you're wondering how they've been around for so long, maybe it's because they keep things simple. Wait, bite, swallow, bask, repeat. There's something strangely peaceful about watching a creature that never evolved the need for ambition. While humans were building ziggurats and inventing taxes, crocodiles were still floating quietly near the shore, not paying rent, and rarely moving faster than a sneeze. And if you're wondering whether they sleep with one eye open, yes, sometimes. A croc can snooze half its brain at a time. Which honestly feels like a metaphor for certain coworkers. Now imagine the comet that wiped out the dinosaurs. Fire in the sky, tsunamis, rolling inland dust, choking the sun for years. You'd think that would be a showstopper. But down in the muddy backwaters, the crocodile just kept doing its thing. Maybe it moved a little deeper. Maybe it didn't. Either way, it waited out the apocalypse like someone ignoring drama on a group chat. You step further into the mental swamp. The fog thickens. Crocodiles don't just survive, they outwait. They don't fight for territory the way humans do. They don't upgrade. They don't invest in crypto. They just stay exactly what they are, armor-plated, amphibious, and totally done with your nonsense. And in that stillness, there's power. There's the secret to outliving not just your enemies, but history itself. You crouch beside the water, watching the creature stretch its jaw open just slightly like it's yawning in slow motion. There's no rush. There's never a rush. This isn't a predator that chases. This is one that waits for you to mess up. You imagine what it feels like to be that calm, to live off the sun's heat instead of caffeine, to let your heartbeat slow down instead of spiraling into deadlines and existential dread. That's because crocodiles, unlike you, don't burn calories to stay warm. They're ectothermic, cold-blooded. Their internal thermostat reads like whatever the weather's doing, I guess. If the sun's out, great, they'll warm up like a rock. If it's cold, they just slow down until it isn't. No blankets, no whining, just vibes. Warm-blooded animals like us have to burn insane amounts of energy to keep our bodies around 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, crocodiles can go days, even weeks without food simply because they're not wasting energy thinking about how to impress other crocodiles with a podcast. They're thermoregulation minimalists. While mammals were busy evolving fur coats and higher metabolisms, crocodiles were like, no thanks, I'll just sit in this puddle and bask. Of course, basking isn't as lazy as it looks. It's strategic. You're watching one now as it climbs onto a mudbank belly, dragging like a sack of wet bricks. The way it moves is almost comical, like someone waking up too early on a Saturday. But once it's still, you'd swear it turned into part of the bank itself. Only the eyes stay above the surface like two periscopes from some ancient submarine no one remembers building. Odd fact. A crocodile's skin isn't just armor, it's solar panel armor. Those dark ridges on its back absorb heat with ruthless efficiency. It's like if your spine were made of built-in hand warmers. Ancient Egyptian stone carvers got the look right down to the bumpy osteoderms that serve no decorative purpose but everything to survival. Historians still debate whether crocodiles use their thermal efficiency to migrate through cooler climates during the ice ages. What's certain is that their design hasn't needed an upgrade in over 200 million years. You know how phones change every year? The crocodile's operating system is basically the prehistoric version of if it ain't broke. You notice something else? The creature hasn't blinked. Not really. Crocodiles have a third eyelid, a clear one that swipes sideways like a windshield wiper underwater. It lets them see while submerged, which is handy if you like sneak attacks and hate losing track of your food. You're here trying not to step in something mushy, and it's over there casually deploying underwater goggles without making a fuss. Your feet sink a little into the warm mud. There's something hypnotic about being near this thing. It doesn't feel alive in the same way a dog or a bird feels alive. It feels like a force like gravity or an awkward silence in a crowded elevator. A living fossil, yes, but also a reminder that not all life races forward. Some of it lies very still and waits for everyone else to burn out. The sun rises higher and the crocodile lifts its head slightly to catch more warmth. No twitch, no grunt, no drama. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was meditating. But it's not. It's charging. It's fueling up like a solar-powered predator preparing for the moment it'll need to move, and then it'll explode faster than your camera app can focus. Back when our ancestors were still figuring out how to not get eaten by hyenas, this creature had already mastered the art of time. Not seconds or minutes, epochs. It knows when to lie still. It knows when to strike. And most importantly, it knows that moving all the time is just a good way to get noticed. You try to imagine what it's seen. Rain falling on the heads of Homo erectus. Herds of aurochs stomping past its hiding spot. The first human who pointed at one and said, "Don't swim there." Probably the first one who ignored that advice too. Modern humans might think we're in charge now. We've got planes, smartphones, and solar-powered garbage cans. But the crocodile, it never needed tools. It is the tool. Perfectly adapted for ambush. Built-in snorkel check. Immense bite force stronger than a great white shark. Patience enough to sit in the same spot for hours without a single complaint. You shift your weight, suddenly aware that you're the one being watched. That stillness, it's not random. It's reading your body language like an ancient therapist, with no time for excuses. It knows how big you are, how fast you could run, how warm your blood is. And it's calculating with a brain smaller than a walnut whether you're worth the effort. Here's the funny thing, most crocodile attacks happen not because they're hungry, but because someone got too close to their sunbeam. You don't interrupt an ancient creature's morning bask unless you're ready to become the equivalent of brunch. And crocodiles don't get up easily, but when they do, they go. Their burst speed on land. Up to 12 miles per hour. Not fast enough to outrun a car, but definitely fast enough to make your flip-flops irrelevant. That silence you're hearing now. That's what survival sounds like. No growling, no roaring. Just ambient humidity and the occasional splash. Everything about this animal says one thing: conserve energy. Wait for opportunity, take it without warning. And maybe deep down, that's why you're still here watching, listening, learning. Not because you're afraid, well, a little afraid, but because you're finally seeing what it means to live by different rules. To embrace stillness, to master your surroundings by blending into them. Maybe you can't be a crocodile. You need coffee and Wi-Fi. But for a moment, standing in the warmth beside this sunbathing legend, you understand the appeal of slow breath, cool blood, and a hunger that never rushes. You wade through shallows, the color of forgotten tea, sidestepping twisted roots and soggy reeds. The crocodile hasn't followed you, but you haven't left it behind either. It's there in the back of your thoughts, a cold-blooded bookmark that just waits for the next page to turn. Up ahead, the river curves wide and regal. This is the Nile, and right now you're about 3,000 years late to be offered a linen tunic and a date snack. The reeds shift. Another pair of eyes breaks the waterline, smaller but not small. Just another local. Because here, crocodiles aren't visitors. They're residents, old ones, possibly homeowners, probably tax-exempt. You walk slowly now. The air thickens with incense and goat sweat. The sound of chanting hovers in the air like smoke. You've wandered into ancient Egypt, not the movie set version, but the actual buzzing riverbank where crocodiles bask and humans pretend to be in charge. And here's the fun part. The crocodile doesn't know. This is an empire. It doesn't care that Pharaoh just declared himself a living god, or that some guy is about to spend 20 years hauling limestone to build a triangle. The croc just wants the sun, the water, and maybe something tender that wandered too close. Odd fact. The Egyptians kept crocodiles as sacred animals. Real ones. Live ones. They built sanctuaries for them, gave them names, fed them delicacies, dressed them in gold. Honestly, it sounds like something a bored billionaire might do during a spiritual crisis. Sobek, the crocodile-headed god, was more than just a scary face. He symbolized strength, fertility, protection, especially for the Nile itself. If the annual floods arrived on time, Sobek was praised. If they didn't, well, people still avoided insulting him, just in case he was listening from under the lily pads. Historians still debate whether worship of Sobek began as fear management or a genuine attempt to understand nature's unpredictability. Either way, it worked. People built temples, prayed before crocodile pools, and mummified their sacred reptiles with more reverence than some royal relatives. There are vaults filled with linen-wrapped crocodiles buried like VIPs. That's a level of respect most people don't get even after 3 divorces and a retirement party. You move closer to one of these temples, just a ruin. Now its stone's cracked and home to lizards. But back then, this would have been a gleaming monument with pools stocked by priests, each containing a divine croc with a name like raw's bite, or smooth death. It was religion with teeth and scales. Imagine being a peasant living a stone's throw from one of those temples. You fish the Nile, you wash your clothes, and sometimes when your goat wanders too close, you make peace with the idea that it's part of the crocodile tithe now. These creatures were everywhere, not just in myths, but in canals, irrigation ditches, and public swimming spots. It wasn't just belief that kept people respectful, it was reality. Reality with a jaw that snaps at over 3,000 pounds per square inch. You glance across the river and spot something sleek slide into the water. Maybe it's a young crocodile. Maybe it's an ancient one that never left. One that's learned to avoid noise, stick to deep shadows, and let humans do the building and burying. Remember, crocodiles don't have loyalty. They don't serve temples or gods. They accepted worship like a free lunch. If a priest fell in while feeding one well, Sobek works in mysterious ways. The crocodile's lack of interest in politics or religion didn't keep it from being involved in both. In some dynasties, pharaohs associated themselves with Sobek to project power. A divine crocodile on your team. That's good PR. Some rulers even took on crocodile names hoping to channel the same fear and control the reptile, wielded so effortlessly with a flick of its tail. But the crocodile didn't care. Not when the Hyksos invaded, not when Ramses declared victory at Kadesh, and not when Cleopatra posed for coins. All that mattered was whether the river stayed full and the sun stayed warm. It's the same today, by the way. There are still Nile crocodiles lounging near villages where people wash laundry and rinse dinnerware. Tourists come by boat. Locals shrug, the crocodiles blink. You hear something slap the water. A large one judging by the echo. You imagine the conversation. Tourist! Wow. Are those dangerous local fishermen only if you act like food? There's something quietly impressive about being a creature that's seen the entire arc of a civilization, from reed huts to royal tombs, and barely changed. Crocodiles didn't have to evolve new skills. Humans built around them, prayed to them, tried to kill them, and eventually turned them into leather. But through all that, crocodiles just kept doing what worked: lie, still bite, well, sleep often. You sit down now on a flat rock warmed by the sun. Across the river, a crocodile basks in the exact same pose. You can almost feel its ancient heartbeat thudding against the silt. It doesn't judge. It doesn't admire your species or despise it. It doesn't care that your kind will one day invent satellites and shopping malls. Because you can't out-tech patience. You can't out-think stillness. All this civilization, this royalty, this golden grandeur, it came and went. The pharaohs are gone. The temples cracked. The gods renamed and forgotten. But the crocodile is still here. You walk downstream now, the Nile unwinding beside you like some slow ancient scroll half unread and mostly misinterpreted. The sun hangs low, butter yellow and sticky, and the heat wraps around your skin like a wet bandage. You're heading into the late Bronze Age, where sandals slapped dry earth, and empires traded copper blades and jars of scented oil. And beneath it all, beneath the market, chatter, beneath the sandals, beneath the slow roll of ox carts, your old friend the crocodile drifts like a living rumor no one's ever quite willing to test. The river's edge smells different now, less raw mud, more human effort. Fish traps line the shallows. Boats made of lashed papyrus nod lazily in the current. There's a boy gutting a tilapia with a knife that was until recently part of a chariot's wheel hub. Recycling was a thing even back then. You wonder if he knows there's something watching from just below the surface. He probably does. Everyone does. That's why no one turns their back to the water. Odd fact, crocodiles can go without food for months. But when they do eat, their stomachs are so acidic they can digest bones, horns, hooves, and in some rare unfortunate cases, bracelets. Archaeologists still debate whether some Bronze Age jewelry found in riverside deposits was dropped or processed. That gold bangle you're admiring in the museum could have been crocodile poop once. Glamorous. This is the age when people start organizing their diets by class. Nobles feast on roasted birds, honey cakes, and imported figs. Farmers eat barley stew and whatever fish they can afford not to lose a hand for. The crocodile, as always, remains class blind. It doesn't care whether your family worships Horus or invented the potter's wheel. If you step in at the wrong moment, you're a protein source. No favoritism, just physics. You crouch by the riverbank near a small market town where trade goods pass hands faster than rumors. Someone's unloading spices wrapped in cloth. Another merchant counts bronze arrowheads. You look closer at the discarded animal bits near the butcher's stalls. And there it is, crocodile bait. Scraps tossed to distract, a polite offering to the god who might eat your cousin if you forget. It's not a formal ritual, but it's done daily without question, just in case. Historians still debate whether crocodiles adapted to human settlements by changing their feeding habits. What's known is that over time, these reptiles developed an uncanny ability to track human routines. They linger near washing sites, fishing spots, places where clumsy kids might fall in. Not predators in the classic sense, more like behavioral economists with tails. Some ancient texts describe crocodiles as cunning, almost magical. There's a passage from a lost scribe who swears he saw one leap a full body length from the water to snatch a goose mid-flight. Is it true? Who knows? But if you've ever seen a crocodile lunge straight up with terrifying grace, you'd believe it. They hunt, using a mix of physics and patience. When a crocodile bites, it doesn't chew, it clamps, locks, holds, then it spins. That's the infamous death roll, a term that sounds like a bad 80s band, but is actually one of the most brutally effective techniques in the animal kingdom. And guess what? It's not just for killing. Sometimes they use it to tear food apart, or even to disorient prey. Or, to impress another crocodile. Courtship is weird like that. The one you're watching now drifts through shallow water nostrils just above the surface. It's passing beneath a wooden bridge built in the days when bridges were new and people still thought maybe the river god won't mind. The bridge creaks. You hear footsteps, 2 adults, a child. The crocodile doesn't move. It just listens. You remember that crocodiles have excellent hearing and vision, and they can feel the tiniest vibrations through the pressure sensors on their jaws. It's like living inside a giant muscle-bound stethoscope. You step back instinctively even though it hasn't moved an inch. You're learning. Nearby, a group of laborers prepares to haul in a fishing net. They chant rhythmically, calling to one another in a language that hasn't been spoken aloud in 3,000 years. The crocodile moves now just a few inches, just enough to reposition. It's not stalking the fish. It's waiting to see what you leave behind. Because this is a crocodile that's lived long enough to know that the best meals aren't always in the water. Sometimes they come to you wrapped in sandals, sweating and distracted. It's seen humans get too confident, too noisy, too used to safety. You move on through the reeds, but not before one last glance. The creature sinks slowly like a whisper retreating from a shout. The water closes over it, smooth and casual. Not a ripple remains. If you hadn't seen it go under, you'd swear it was never there. So much has changed since the crocodile first appeared in this river tools, gods, languages, weaponry. But so much has stayed the same, the warmth of the sun, the tug of the current, the taste of copper and blood. And the crocodile silent through it all, as evening draws its long shadow across the Bronze Age world. A single truth settles into your bones. This predator doesn't chase history, it lets history come to it. You're not sure when the terrain changed, only that it did. The Nile feels wider now, more theatrical, like it's been given a crown and a captive audience. You've stepped into the time of Rome. And not just toga-wearing poetry reciting Rome, but boots-on-the-ground empire stretching everything is Mars's fault Rome. The kind of Rome that draws lines on maps and then calls them destiny. And yet below the banners and aqueducts, a crocodile slides unseen through the same river channels it always has. No trumpets, no road taxes, just the quiet knowledge that it has been here long before the idea of Rome ever had a passport. You sit on a stone quay watching olive-skinned soldiers unload grain from reed boats. Somewhere off-screen, Cleopatra is making deals. Julius Caesar is being complicated, and Augustus is pretending to be humble. But right here, right where you're crouching, the water's still warm, still slow, still full of secrets, and still full of crocodiles. There's one beneath the dock. You hear it before you see it. A soft thunk of something solid against wood followed by the subtle swirl of displaced water. It doesn't surface. It doesn't need to. It's listening, measuring, judging the weight of Roman ambition the way it might judge the heft of a goat leg. The crocodile doesn't flinch when empires burn. It doesn't flinch when Rome annexes Egypt or when Alexandria's libraries go up in flames. That kind of drama is for humans. Crocodiles have no opinion on conquest. They're the opposite of Caesar's ambition, indifferent, enduring, deeply uninterested in your manifest destiny. Odd fact. Some Roman soldiers stationed in Egypt refused to bathe in certain river sections, not out of superstition, but from sheer crocodile anxiety. Imagine training to fight Gallic warriors only to be outwitted by a reptile with the emotional range of a brick and the patience of a librarian. You walk through an open-air market bustling with Roman-Egyptian culture clash, someone selling amphorae of honeyed wine. Another hawks wax tablets. A Roman officer negotiates for a crocodile skin belt with mild horror and medium interest. And in the distance, near the shallows, you spot a shrine, small sandstone flanked with lotus carvings. Still dedicated to Sobek. Even with the empire leaning hard into Jupiter and Minerva, the old river gods haven't left. You don't mess with what lurks underfoot. Historians still debate whether crocodiles in Roman-ruled Egypt became more aggressive due to river traffic and disrupted ecosystems. One camp argues they adapted to urban patterns. Another suggests they simply got better at avoiding crowds. Either way, crocodiles didn't pack up and leave. They just got smarter or quieter. Rome is good at recording victories, but bad at documenting things that can't be conquered. Crocodiles didn't sign treaties. They didn't build statues of emperors. And when Roman bathhouses showed up on the banks of sacred rivers, the crocodiles simply waited for one unattended ankle at the wrong hour. You follow a Roman courier along a towpath as he tries to make up lost time. His sandals slap the stones like punctuation marks. His satchel swings full of decrees, trade agreements, and bad news. But the crocodile doesn't care that it's wartime, or peacetime, or tax season. It's waiting for the world to come a little closer. Just one mistake. Just one splash. Near a flooded inlet, two boys argue in Greek about whose job it was to mind the fish basket. One kicks mud at the other. They don't notice the green-scaled shape tucked beneath the lily pads. You hold your breath for them, but the crocodile doesn't move. Not today. Maybe it ate yesterday. Or maybe it's waiting for someone louder, slower, ruder. It has all the time in the world. It always has. A Roman scholar once wrote that crocodiles had the cunning of devils, the stillness of statues, and the mouth of war. He wasn't wrong, just dramatic. These creatures don't need cunning. Just silent sun and something edible that can't swim well. You catch a glimpse of another crocodile farther out, gliding near a grain barge. It doesn't attack, just passes underneath invisible, except for the wake it drags behind. The boatman doesn't even look. He's probably seen too many of them to care. You begin to wonder, has anyone ever really ruled the Nile? Or were they all just tenants in a river owned by something scalier? Crocodiles don't burn. They don't get crucified. They don't riot. While humans tear down statues and hoist new flags, the crocodile floats just beneath the fireworks. Remember how Rome eventually collapsed? Not all at once, not with a bang, but with a long, slow leak of power. Roads falling apart, armies going home, bureaucrats forgetting why they even care anymore. And through it all, through the crumbling columns and the fading maps, a crocodile somewhere in the Nile just blinked once and rolled over for a warmer patch of sun. You lie back on a smooth rock. The river whispers beside you, carrying olive oil, papyrus soldiers, legends, and lunch. Above it all, the sky begins to bruise with dusk. But below the water line, the crocodile continues. Older than Rome, older than Egypt, older than memory itself, and absolutely unmoved. You're walking along a dried floodplain now. Your boots, if you're still wearing any, crunching over sun-baked soil cracked like ancient parchment. Every so often, you pass the skeleton of a forgotten irrigation channel, or the outline of some long evaporated pool. The river's course has shifted like everything does but the crocodile. It remains, not in every stretch of water, not under every reed mat, but somewhere always it's still watching. This one has teeth older than your language. That's not poetic, it's a fact. Crocodile dentition. The arrangement and shape of those jagged, bone-cracking jaws has barely changed in more than 200 million years. Humans switched from stone to bronze to iron. Languages morphed, mixed, and died out. And yet this animal opens its mouth today just like its ancestors did before Pangea gave up and broke into continents. You come across a mudbank now. There's a trail of smooth belly tracks leading down to the water, and beside them a few scattered teeth. Sharp curved, each one the size of your thumb. No big deal, crocodiles lose teeth all the time. It's part of the gig. New ones grow in like subway trains, always another one scheduled. You pick one up and it's heavier than expected, like history in fang form. Odd fact. Crocodile teeth aren't attached like yours. They sit in sockets and pop out whenever needed. A crocodile can go through 8,000 teeth in its lifetime. 8,000. Meanwhile, you're probably still holding on to the same molars from middle school, minus the one you cracked on a popcorn kernel. You stand at the edge of a low bluff overlooking the water. Below, a crocodile glides by, silent, unbothered, looking like a log. Someone cursed with mild contempt, and you can't help it, you think of your own ancestors. Not the ones with credit scores and driver's licenses, but the ones with sunburns, wooden spears, and absolutely no idea what a croc was until it had their ankle. Historians still debate whether early hominins learned to fear crocodiles instinctively or by traumatic trial and error. The fossil record tells us hominins congregated near water. So did crocodiles. It was less a friendship, more of an unspoken agreement. You stay alert and I don't remove your kneecaps, most of the time anyway. You imagine the conversation. Early human. Should we drink here? Early human 2 already halfway into the bush? Absolutely not. There's something about crocodile teeth that makes you feel judged. Not like your dentist does, but like an ancient force is sizing you up and finding you very unremarkable. Those teeth aren't just sharp, they're honest. They don't bluff. When they close, they close. Their bite force is one of the strongest in the animal kingdom. Numbers vary depending on the species, but let's just say if it grabs you, you're not going to tweet about it later. You walk now along a line of fossilized impressions, teeth marks and bone from an early mammal. Not human, not even close. Probably some unfortunate dog-sized thing that wandered too near a watering hole 50 million years ago. The bite radius matches modern crocodiles. You wonder if it was even a different species. Probably not. That's the thing about crocodilians, they already worked out the perfect system long before your kind even showed up with opposable thumbs and a questionable love of dairy. The design hasn't changed because it hasn't needed to. Nature rarely gets it this right the first time, but when it does, it sticks. Long snout for snapping, strong tail for swimming, armored back like mobile rock. You can't improve on a beast that spent more time being effective than all of human civilization put together. Back when dinosaurs ruled the land early, croc ancestors weren't much different. Some walked on land more often. Some grew longer legs. A few were built like predatory vacuum cleaners, but the basics. The business end, the digestion system, the ambush lifestyle, all of that, already in place. You want to talk about legacy. This thing's resume starts before birds learn to fly. You crouch near the water again this time, watching a young crocodile twist sideways to chomp a struggling catfish. That jaw rotation, it's part of the magic. Crocodiles don't chew remember. They just grab, twist, tear, and swallow. It's not elegant, but it works. Some high-end chefs might call that deconstructed cuisine. You hear a sound behind you. Just a flutter, maybe a bird. Or maybe nothing, but you freeze anyway. Because you're finally learning the oldest rule in crocodile country: don't get too comfortable. Still, water doesn't mean safe water. The silence. That's not mercy. That's a trap. And somehow, it's all tied to those teeth. Each one built not to intimidate but to function. Crocodile teeth don't have to look scary. They are scary. You could be a zebra, a fish, a wild pig, or a careless tourist, it doesn't matter. The result is the same: bite, drag, drown. Teeth that have whispered the end to millions over the eons, and not once needed sharpening. You move back from the water's edge, keeping your feet light. Somewhere in the reeds, something big exhales, but it doesn't lunge. You're not the snack today, just a guest. A reminder that teeth aren't just tools. They're timekeepers. And these teeth have seen it all. You're crouched in the tall grass now, not hiding exactly, just being less visible. The sky has turned a sleepy orange, and the insects are warming up for their evening concert. Somewhere nearby, a crocodile begins to sing. No, really. It doesn't sound like singing, of course. It's a low-frequency rumble that you don't hear as much as feel like someone humming through the soles of your feet. The vibrations ripple through the water, across the mud, and into the ribcage of any reptile within range. Welcome to the strangest dating app in prehistory. That sound. It's courtship. Not quite romantic, but deeply effective. Crocodiles communicate through seismic pulses, infrasonic grumbles, and body slaps on the surface of the water. It's not subtle, but it works. And right now, you're listening to what amounts to prehistoric flirting. I'm strong, I'm big, and I will totally make more crocodiles with you. Odd fact: crocodiles have one of the most bizarre and misunderstood reproductive systems in the animal kingdom. For starters, temperature decides the sex of their babies. If the eggs are incubated at around 88 degrees Celsius, most of the hatchlings will be female. Raise the temperature slightly, just a few degrees, and suddenly you've got yourself a clutch of mostly males. Nature's own thermostat gender reveal party minus the fire hazard. Historians still debate whether ancient people understood this link between sun and sex. Some suggest early farmers noticed it by accident, observing hatch rates in different seasons, but without thermometers or a Patreon-funded research lab, they probably just chalked it up to divine mystery. Why are there more male crocs this year? Sobek's feeling spicy, obviously. Back to you hiding in the grass like a half-interested nature documentarian. You spot the singer now. A large male drifting in a shallow cove. He's floating with his chin slightly raised, body motionless, except for a tiny vibration that shivers through the surface. The water bubbles around him as he hums through his whole chest. Then he slaps his head against the water twice, sending small waves rippling outward like sonar. A female surfaces nearby, smaller, sleeker. She hovers, watching. If this were a romantic comedy, there'd be soft lighting and awkward eye contact. But this is crocodile romance, which means there's mostly lurking, assessing, and the occasional head bob. Then, without warning, he slides toward her with surprising grace. They meet with a snout nuzzle gentle by reptilian standards and sink beneath the water in what is probably the least glamorous date night you've ever witnessed. No candles, no music, just gravity and instinct. You're witnessing one of nature's most enduring relationships, silent, brutal, and effective. Crocodiles don't bond for life, but they remember. A good mating partner might be visited again. A bad one, forgotten like an expired snack. Eggs will be laid in a nest of rotting vegetation that heats up like a natural incubator. And that's where the drama really begins. Mother crocodiles are surprisingly attentive. Once she lays her eggs, she'll guard them fiercely, sometimes refusing to eat, waiting by the nest for weeks. And when the babies begin to hatch, oh, they let her know. The young crocs make tiny chirping sounds from inside the eggs, like someone whispering Morse code from a coffin. That's the cue. Mom carefully scoops them up in her massive jaws and carries them to the water. No joke. Those bone-crushing jaws. That nuclear chomp factory, she uses them like an Uber for her babies, softly holding them between rows of teeth designed to destroy. It's tender in a please don't sneeze kind of way. Some males, by the way, are known to eat hatchlings. Not always, but often enough to make you flinch, which is why females often pick secluded nesting grounds, shaded areas, thick reeds, anywhere they can guard their young without being interrupted by deadbeat dads with snacks on the brain. You notice movement along the bank, dozens of tiny shapes scuttling into the water, each the size of a candy bar and just as twitchy. Baby crocs, just hatched, their eyes already glinting with suspicion, their bodies armored in miniature. You're watching living fossils begin their first swim. It's adorable. It's also terrifying if you're a frog. Only a small percentage of them will survive. Birds, fish, even other crocodiles, everything loves a baby croc buffet. But those who make it, they'll remember this muddy patch of river. They'll know where to bask, where to hide, and where the fish always seem to gather after it rains. You wonder how many generations of crocodiles have repeated this exact ritual in this exact place. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Long before humans farmed, long before they prayed, long before they dug their first canal and accidentally stepped on something that hissed. And the vibrations. They still pulse through the ground. Through you. Crocodile mating calls can travel through water and sediment for long distances. You're not just an observer. You're part of the broadcast. The Earth is humming with it. Prehistoric baseline. Reptilian rhythm section. You pull back, watching the mother hover near her young, half-submerged and alert. She's not smiling. Crocodiles don't smile. But there's something in her stillness, a kind of confidence maybe. The calm certainty of a creature that doesn't need your approval, your evolution, or your social commentary. She'll guard them for a while, then she'll vanish, leaving them to the current and the math of survival. Some will grow, molt, and multiply. Others will disappear before sunrise. But that's how it's always been. The song continues. Soft vibrations, bubbling water, a quiet beat older than pyramids and lullabies. And in the darkness, the river keeps time. You're farther from the equator now. The wind carries a crispness it didn't before. Trees are leafless. The sun feels lower in the sky, like it's second-guessing itself. You're somewhere in the deep time of Earth post-Ice Age, though not everyone's gotten the memo. Giant sloths once lumbered through these valleys. Mammoths trumpeted where parking lots will one day stand. But now, the megafauna are vanishing, retreating into fossils and memory. And the crocodile. It's still here, just moved a little to the left. That's how it survived the Ice Age. Not with thick fur or clever migration paths. It didn't outrun glaciers or build shelters. It simply waited for things to warm up again, shifting habitat as needed. While saber-tooths were sharpening their business cards and reindeer were learning to be tragic holiday mascots, the crocodile just slowed down. Froze less, ate less, waited more, Odd fact, crocodile can enter a state called estivation, which is like hibernation but for heat lovers. When conditions get too cold or too dry, they find a cozy burrow, slow their metabolism to near standstill, and ride out the bad vibes like a reptilian snowbird waiting for Florida weather to return. Some have been known to sit immobile for months, nearly unresponsive, an organic pause button. You find one such hollow now. It's just a dent in a bank half concealed by brittle reeds, but inside the croc-shaped impression in the mud is unmistakable. It was here. Maybe for weeks. Maybe for centuries. Who knows? You crouch and touch the wall. It's cool, quiet, still. Historians still debate whether Ice Age crocodiles maintained interbreeding with tropical populations or became isolated micropopulations that evolved independently. The fossil record is patchy. River deltas move. Climates shift. Bones get buried and forgotten. But traces remain. Bite marks on megafauna bones, nesting sites hardened into rock. A tooth where no river has flowed in 10,000 years. You wander along a dry riverbed that once pulsed with seasonal meltwater. Now, it's just a path through silence, but you can imagine it the glint of scales beneath muddy floodwaters. The sudden burst of movement when a deer slipped on the bank. The slow churn of digestion behind patient eyes. The crocodile didn't need to outrun time. It simply ignored it. Imagine watching an entire continent reshape itself. Ice pushing south like a celestial bulldozer. Forests collapsing. Deserts expanding. Entire species blinking out of existence. And through it all, you, the crocodile, just sink a little deeper into the mud, wait, a little longer between meals, and keep your jaw ready for when something eventually wanders too close. That's the strategy. Not domination, not aggression, just endurance. You don't need to be the biggest predator. You just need to still be there when the other ones are gone. You pause at a small lake, a glacial remnant now choked with algae. There's movement beneath the surface. A croc half submerged, nearly invisible. Its eyes barely break the waterline. Steam rises from the surface, fogging the air. It blinks once. You nod. It does not nod back. Crocodiles aren't great with compliments. Nearby, a hunter modern human, not prehistoric, leans against a birch tree rifle slung over his shoulder. He doesn't see the croc. Not yet. He's tracking something warmer, furrier. You resist the urge to call out. This isn't your story to interrupt. The croc shifts, very slowly. No sound, no splash. It's not hunting, just adjusting, keeping itself between sunlight and shadow, like a ghost made of armor. And that's the trick, isn't it? Through the Ice Age and its slow, clumsy exit, crocodiles learn to read warmth the way you read headlines. They detect minute changes in water temperature. They sun themselves with geometric precision. Some species even dig test nests to check if the climate's still right for egg laying. Thermodynamics. They've got it covered, but while they survived, others didn't. The woolly rhino, the saber-tooth, the glyptodon, all gone. You can still visit their bones in museums carefully posed like they're just resting, but the crocodile, you can visit that too in the next river over. No ticket required, just courage and maybe a good life insurance policy. You sit on a fallen log listening to the wind creep through the trees. There's something eerie about knowing that the same creature now drifting across this pond once outweighted an entire extinction event. No fire, no asteroid. Just slow environmental collapse, and still the crocodile carried on. People say survival of the fittest, but that's not what this is. This is survival of the stillest, of the quietest, of the ones who don't waste energy making noise about their own endurance. You watch as the crocodile finally moves just a lazy paddle, with its tail gliding into deeper water as if it heard something you didn't. Or maybe it just got bored. And here's the part that sticks with you. This crocodile is carrying the DNA of survivors, not warriors, not innovators, But those who knew how to wait, who moved slowly, carefully, efficiently, like death was a background character and they were just minding their business. The Ice Age ended. Temperatures rose. Forests came back. So did new predators, new prey. But the crocodile stayed the same. Maybe a little smaller, maybe a little smarter, but still armored, still silent, still chewing the same menu that once included early elephants and careless deer. And you're still watching, still in awe, because some things don't evolve to adapt. They evolve to endure. The air is thick now, not with fog, but with the kind of human anxiety you can almost smell. You've drifted into a time when cities stink of fear, and the skies above Europe are heavy with superstition. It's the 14th century, and the Black Death is peeling through the continent like some divine audit. But not here. Not by this river. Not where the crocodile floats unbothered. You're in a tropical lowland, possibly Africa, possibly South Asia. Doesn't matter. The key thing is, while humanity is busy losing 1/3 of its population to an invisible bacterium, the crocodile is busy deciding whether or not your shadow is worth chasing. Odd fact, the plague didn't hit crocodiles. No rodent vectors, no flea-borne pathogens, no festering buboes. While doctors in bird masks shoved herbs up their sleeves and people bled each other with grim optimism, crocodiles just kept eating fish and the occasional laundry woman. You sit on a mud-covered rock by the river's edge. A few villagers nearby are collecting water, all of them keeping one eye on the reeds. You can feel it. The tension, the casual deference to the predator in their midst. There's a subtle etiquette: don't splash, don't linger, don't let your child wander. A young girl tosses something into the water, a ritual offering, or just fish guts. Either way, the river takes it with no comment. You hear a faint woof of breath from beneath a half-submerged log and a ripple breaks the surface. Crocodile always was, probably always will be. Historians still debate whether human settlements in plague-era regions changed their interaction with apex predators. Some evidence suggests that people abandoned riverbanks out of fear not of crocs, but of each other. Villages shrank. Temples fell into disuse. Livestock went unattended. And in that quiet, the crocodile returned. You imagine the scene: plague doctors evacuating a monastery, the last monk bolting the door behind him. Outside, nature starts to reclaim the stonework. Ivy creeps in. Frogs multiply in the fountain. And one day a crocodile slinks up through a broken aqueduct and basks where someone once read scripture aloud. The world was quieter then. Too quiet. And crocodiles are excellent listeners. You follow a narrow path to the river's curve, where a sun-bleached cross has fallen sideways into the mud. A reminder that people once tried to keep this place holy. But holiness doesn't stop crocodiles. Faith might keep you calm, but it won't keep you buoyant. The predator you're watching now is old. You can tell by the algae crusted along its flanks, by the way it doesn't bother to dive when you pass. Its mouth is slightly open, teeth yellowed but still sharp. Steam rises from its skin like breath from bread. It's digesting something. Or maybe just thinking in the way that crocodiles think, which is mostly in instincts and bone. There's something comforting in its indifference. You with your centuries of human panic. You with your plague masks and quarantine walls. And it with a glance that says, I've survived worse than you. Oddly, crocodiles became minor symbols during plague years. In some regions, travelers brought mummified croc heads as talismans, tokens of resilience. The logic was shaky. This creature doesn't get sick, therefore it must be magic. Which is sort of like admiring a rock because it never catches a cold. But you get it. When the world is rotting, anything that keeps still starts to look holy. You shift, realizing your foot is in the water now. Slowly, you pull it back. The crocodile watches, not moving. You think you're safe. But you also think you left the stove on sometimes, and that's why we don't trust your instincts here. One villager approaches with a long pole. Not a weapon, a probe. He gently pokes the river ahead before stepping into it. The message is clear: I don't own this place. I rent it from something that doesn't care if I can read. And there's the core of it. During the plague, humans retreated. Crocodiles didn't. They didn't need to understand germ theory. They didn't draft responses or blame the stars. They just stayed near the water, warmed by the sun, waiting for something to forget they existed. They are not apex predators because of brute force. They're apex because of efficiency, because they never change more than they have to. When the world turns toxic, they turn inward. When food disappears, they wait longer. When danger comes, they sink lower. You watch the old crocodile close its eyes, just the nictitating membrane, that sideways eyelid like a clear curtain, and let the current spin a few leaves across its snout. To everyone else, the plague was chaos. To the crocodile, it was just another Tuesday. Nearby, a trader with a wooden cart stops to rest. He stares at the river with deep, sunken eyes. You hear him mutter, "Even the beasts stay quiet now." He doesn't realize that they're always quiet. He just never noticed until the people stop talking. You walk on following the bend of the river as birds settle for the night. Somewhere far away, a bell tolls for the dead. But here, in the wet hush of the floodplain, the crocodile lies in its sanctuary. Immune to panic, immune to headlines, immune to everything except time. And time, as it turns out, is not in a hurry. You're trudging along the edge of a sugarcane field now, somewhere in the blurry overlap between the 19th and 20th centuries, an era that believed in railroads, empires, and putting fences where the wild things were. The world is changing fast. Forests fall to the swing of axes. Swamps are drained not because anyone's thirsty, but because the mosquitoes are irritating, and the land looks better in straight lines. And the crocodile, it's getting harder to find. You pause beside a sluggish canal, the water tinted with fertilizer runoff and stubborn algae. A heron steps delicately along the far bank, pausing just long enough to consider its reflection. Somewhere beneath, something ancient stirs but doesn't rise. The crocodile is still here, sort of. But for the first time in its 200-million-year legacy, it has a real problem, people with paperwork. You're in the age of deforestation, industrialization, hunting not for survival but for sport. And habitat loss isn't just a buzzword here, it's a bulldozer. The crocodile, which has calmly outlasted comets and plagues, is now dodging boats, bullets, and bulldozers. Odd fact, in some colonial journals, crocodiles were described as troublesome wildlife, a category they shared with leopards, rats, and inexplicably coconuts. One British administrator in India even ordered weekly crocodile culls, not because they were causing damage, but because they looked disagreeable. Truly a stunning victory for aesthetics. You step over a rusted trap, its teeth frozen mid-snap. There are more of them scattered like the forgotten punctuation of an overzealous editor. Crocodile skins are in fashion now, boots, belts, purses for people who wouldn't last 5 minutes in a swamp. You want to be mad, but the crocodile isn't. It doesn't even know. It doesn't rage. It just disappears a little farther downstream. Historians still debate whether colonial infrastructure or trophy hunting did more harm to crocodile populations. What's not debated? The effect was brutal. Entire river systems saw their apex predators vanish within decades. Where there were once ripples and soft hisses, now there's just silence and concrete. You follow a narrow path cut through cattails ending at a dusty railway platform. A sign creaks in the wind, caution man-eaters in vicinity. But it's not about crocodiles, it's about tigers. Funny how predators become myths once they inconvenience empire. Crocs, meanwhile, fade into background hazards. No medals, no headlines, just slow extinction one rice paddy at a time. And yet, they adapt. Not in huge dramatic evolutionary leaps. That's not the crocodile way. Instead, they shift. Nocturnal, where once they basked by day. Quieter, sneakier. You pass an abandoned tea estate where the irrigation ditches have become breeding grounds. No one goes near them now. Workers whisper about spirits. You know better. It's not ghosts, it's teeth. You find one at dusk. A big male, maybe 15 feet long, wedged between the roots of a banyan tree. Its skin is scarred and dull, like armor left out in the rain. One eye is milky, an old injury. The other watches you with the bored patience of something that has lived through multiple calendar systems. It breathes once, just once, a deep gravelly exhale that sounds like wind over a tomb. You imagine the conversation. Victorian explorer. It's a brute, no doubt. Crocodile. You built your home on my dining room, pal. The industrial age doesn't suit the crocodile. Trains are too fast. Fences too sharp, people too loud. But it holds on in the margins, sewers, culverts, forgotten channels behind factories. It is not pride. Crocodiles don't have that. It's just a deeply reptilian refusal to quit. You sit now beside an irrigation sluice watching the moon rise over a field. Crickets hum. A dog barks in the distance. The water is black and still. And then the faintest ripple. The crocodile slides past like a rumor. Not hunted. Not hiding. Just surviving. You think about the empires that declared war on it. The hunters who wore its skin to banquets. The engineers who drained its hunting grounds and filled them with concrete. And how all of them in the end still needed water, still needed rivers. And when they returned centuries later, documents in hand and conservation grants in their pockets, the crocodile was still there. Fewer, yes, but not gone. They didn't survive the comet just to die from bureaucracy. Odd thing about crocodiles, their intelligence is subtle. Not tool-using or mirror-recognizing, but practical. They remember places. They remember people. Some have been seen waiting near village docks exactly at the hour when fish guts are thrown out. Not because they understand clocks, but because they understand rhythm. And that's what this is now. Rhythm. The slow pulsing persistence of a species that isn't done yet, that won't evolve into something else. That won't be rebranded or reintroduced in trendy documentaries. It will simply wait for the forests to grow back. You stand as the wind shifts, carrying the smell of diesel and something wetter, something older. The field behind you hums with power lines. The water before you is silent. And the crocodile, half hidden beneath weeds, blinks once. Comets cute. Pandemics. A Tuesday. But deforestation. That might take a little more patience. You're drifting now into a softer world, one that lives half in stories, half in swamp gas. The jungle has closed in around the river, wrapping everything in green and shadow. The humidity makes your shirt cling like guilt. And from the water's edge, you sense it again, that flicker of ancient eyes just under the surface. Watching, waiting, not with hunger, but with memory. Because now we've entered the age of myth. The crocodile, once just another apex predator in the food chain, has been promoted by poets, priests, and very tired fishermen to something else entirely. A monster, a god, a cautionary tale with a tail. You pass through a village carved into the jungle's edge. The people here know the crocodile not as a zoological specimen, but as a neighbor who demands respect. They leave offerings at the riverbank, burn herbs, tell stories at night. Not because they're primitive, but because they remember. Odd fact, in Papua New Guinea, certain tribal groups perform crocodile scarification rituals, carving their skin to resemble the armored back of the animal. These scars aren't just decorative, they're identity. You're not just becoming a man, you're becoming part crocodile. Imagine that, turning your own skin into a tribute to something that might still eat you if you slipped. Elsewhere, stories twist the crocodile into demons. In Hindu mythology, Makara, part crocodile, part fish, part no one knows, serves as a divine mount. In African folklore, the croc can be a shapeshifter, a trickster, or sometimes just a quiet listener that carries the dead across the water. Sound familiar? Historians still debate whether these mythic versions came from fear reverence, or the human need to assign meaning to the unblinking. Maybe all three. After all, when something stares at you without blinking for 1,000 years, you eventually start writing poems about it. You duck beneath a curtain of vines and emerge at a clearing where a statue leans sideways in the mud. It's not Roman, not Egyptian, just a crude shape with an open mouth and stone eyes. Offerings rot at its base fish heads, flowers coins a half-eaten mango. It's not religious anymore, not exactly. Just a habit. A way of saying, we haven't forgotten who the river really belongs to. And here's the thing, most people who talk about crocodiles have never met one in the dark. You cross a wooden bridge, loose boards creaky, and way too casual about their job. Below you, the river churns gently. You stop midway, peer down. The water reflects your shape like it's considering it. And then from underneath a rise, a ripple, a pair of eyes, not moving toward you, just existing. You know that if you blink, you'll miss it. And when you look again, the river's glassy, empty. But it knows you saw it. You sit on the bridge, dangling your legs carefully, listening to the village behind you. Someone is telling a story to a group of children. Their voices rise and fall like a song. You catch a few words. A man with golden boots. He stole fish from the wrong bend. The story ends badly. They always do. That's the difference between monster and myth. A monster is a threat. A myth, a warning. Crocodiles are both depending on the angle of light. There's even a medieval bestiary entry that claims crocodiles weep while eating their prey. That's where we get crocodile tears. Of course, science tells us those tears come from a pressure release valve near their sinuses, not guilt. But the story stuck, because humans are desperate to believe that even killers feel bad sometimes. Not crocodiles. They don't perform regret, they don't explain. They just exist armored in a kind of ancient honesty. I'm here, they say. I don't care why you are. You wander downriver and come to a shrine painted with faded murals, crocodiles with wings, crocodiles with halos, crocodiles walking upright and wearing crowns. Some are mid-chomp, others mid-prayer. It's hard to tell where the reverence ends and the storytelling begins. But that's the point. In the time before Google, everything mysterious got filed under probably magic. And crocodiles. They checked every box. Silent, deadly, always watching. Could vanish in plain sight, could live for decades with barely a ripple. Some people believed they never aged, that they were immortal, that if you saw the same one twice in a lifetime, it was the same exact creature. You couldn't prove otherwise. And honestly, maybe they're right. You reach a bend in the river now that smells like crushed jasmine and something vaguely metallic. A crocodile rests on the opposite bank, its eyes closed, its body half sunken in the sludge. A bird picks insects off its back. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't move. And you think this animal has become everything to everyone. A god, a devil, a metaphor for power, a symbol of patience, a warning, a joke, a logo on a polo shirt. And through all that, it's never stopped being what it always was, a cold-blooded miracle that does not care what you call it. You sit for a while as dusk settles in. The village lights flicker behind you. The crocodile remains a lump of shadow across the river, unmoving, mythic, real. And as the moon creeps into the sky, you wonder how many stories were told tonight about things with teeth, how many prayers whispered, how many warnings issued, all because somewhere in the world, one of these creatures blinked, just once. You wake before the sun air already warm with the threat of heat. The forest smells different now, less jungle, more surveyor's chalk and gun oil. You're stepping into the age of boots. Not the kind worn by farmers or fishermen, but the polished leather kind, the kind that comes with maps flags and a heavy sense of entitlement. Colonialism has arrived, and the crocodile's still here, not amused. You hear the crunch of gravel under boots, the clink of canteens, the jingle of buttons too shiny to belong anywhere near a river. Up ahead, a group of European naturalists walks with notebooks and rifles, speaking in clipped sentences and confident misunderstandings. They are here to catalog the wilderness, to draw boxes around it, to name things that have never asked to be named. They call the crocodile Crocodilus niloticus or porosus, depending on the continent, as if Latinizing it gives them power. It doesn't. The crocodile still doesn't care. But now it has to blink through the smoke of campfires, the sound of gunshots, and the awkward realization that some men hunt, only to prove they're taller than something else. Odd fact: one British colonel reportedly kept a pet crocodile on a leash and brought it to dinner parties. He swore it enjoyed the attention. It didn't. One night it bit a diplomat's shoe and was quietly retired to a muddy compound where it later escaped. No one ever found it, probably still rolling its eyes somewhere. Historians still debate whether colonial administrations had any genuine interest in conservation, or whether early animal protections were just excuses to keep rival colonies from hunting their wildlife. What's certain is that crocodiles became more visible targets. Taxidermists wanted them, trophy walls needed them. And with every photograph of a grinning hunter draped across one, the myth of conquest was fed. But the crocodile blinked through it all. You step around a fallen palm and spot a makeshift outpost, corrugated roof, canvas flaps, crates labeled specimen, handle with care. A small wooden dock stretches into the water where a canoe is tethered and very clearly missing an oar. You already know how that story ended. Near the shore, a local man squats beside the water. He's been watching you. Or maybe not you, just the space you're in. He nods slightly toward the reeds. "Big one there," he says. "3 days now, doesn't move." You peer into the green and brown, into the light and shadow static of morning. You don't see anything. But of course, that's the point. Crocodiles don't flinch when empires shift their borders. They don't acknowledge the new flags or learn the national anthem. They outlast. The forest burns, the roads stretch. The bridges groan and still, somewhere beneath a dock or beside a trail, a set of ancient lungs expands and contracts in slow reptilian rhythm. And you realize something: the crocodile has become a political ghost, feared but ignored, mentioned only when it becomes inconvenient. "There's a crocodile in that channel," someone says, "but we're building a sugar mill, so we'll deal with it later." Spoiler: later often means never, and the crocodile doesn't mind. Not really. It just shifts again, a little deeper into the jungle, a little farther from the loud places. But it watches, and it remembers. You pass an old mission site overgrown with vines and colonial guilt. In the stone baptistry, rainwater has collected in a deep pool. You stare into it. A single bubble rises. Could be gas, could be breath. You step back. These places were supposed to civilize the wild, bring order, enlightenment, the written word. But crocodiles don't read. They don't care if you build a chapel on their nesting beach. They'll just lay eggs behind it and eat your choir boy if he wanders too far during rehearsal. One account from the early 1900s describes a missionary school in Central Africa closing its swimming lessons indefinitely after a particularly dramatic morning. The report was brief, the euphemisms heavy. The crocodile you imagine wrote no apology, and still they blinked on. The same creatures floated past wooden steamboats, carrying spice and fear. They listened to arguments in multiple languages about property and profit. They lurked beneath piers where soldiers cursed the heat and imagined themselves heroes. Empires rise loudly, but they rot quietly. The flags fade, the boots leave, but the river remains. And the crocodile who never signed any treaty still occupies the waterline. You stop by a tree where someone has carved initials, deep gouges spelling out a name no one remembers. The bark has healed around the letters, swallowing them. Crocodiles don't leave names. They leave trails in the mud. They leave silence that echoes louder than a marching band. And when they vanish, no monument is built. There's a finality to their patience, a kind of slow triumph that doesn't need witnesses. The man by the water finishes his cigarette and crushes it underfoot. Still there, he says. You finally see it. Not the whole creature, just an eye. Gold-rimmed, half-lidded, steady. The kind of eye that doesn't ask questions. The kind that knows how the story ends. And here's the thing. While colonial maps were being drawn and redrawn, while borders were argued over like chess matches played with cannons, the crocodile was busy building its own map. Not of land, but of currents, smells, habits, the best places to catch fish, the safest bends to disappear in. It didn't need nations. It needed mud. You walk on away from the outpost, away from the flags. The jungle reclaims the path behind you. The heat presses in. The crocodile watches you go, blinking through colonial boots, never conquered, just quietly outliving them. You're deeper in the present now. The jungle has thinned. Concrete snakes through the wetlands in long, arrogant stretches. The old rivers are now bridges, and the once sacred water holes have visitor centers with brochures. There's a guardrail where the crocodile used to sunbathe, and beyond it, a sign that says protected habitat, no swimming, as if that was ever the problem. You're walking through a national park now, the kind with clean trails, gift shops, and bins that tell you to separate your plastics. There are rules. There are apps. There's a live webcam trained on a nesting site, but the crocodile isn't there. Not at the moment. It knows how to avoid surveillance. It was hiding from hunters before you were even a species. This is the conservation gamble. The moment in the crocodile story where survival no longer depends on its instincts, but on yours. Odd fact, crocodile conservation success stories are rare, but not impossible. The American crocodile Crocodilus acutus once teetered on the edge of extinction. Now, it's crawling back thanks to habitat protections, education, and the surprising fact that sometimes letting wild things be wild actually works. But even protection comes with strings. There's red tape drone footage, DNA tagging, and of course an influencer who once tried to ride one for views. That video deleted. The memory eternal. You pass a ranger station. Inside, a young biologist flips through heat maps showing nest temperatures, crucial data. Since remember, crocodile sex is determined by incubation heat. Too much warming and suddenly you've got a whole generation of the same gender. No mating, no future, just a slow fade into silence. She tells you, we're trying to balance the population. You nod. But the crocodile doesn't need balance. It needs space and silence. Two things humans offer only when absolutely forced. Historians still debate whether modern conservation can ever truly succeed when the economic systems fueling destruction remain untouched. You don't need a PhD to know that a crocodile loses when its nesting bank becomes beachfront property for tourists who love eco-everything, but still leave behind plastic forks. You walk to a small observation platform overlooking a lagoon. A family is there, binoculars, camera, toddler eating something suspiciously sticky. They wait, watch. Snap a photo when a juvenile croc floats by, barely more than a shape in the algae. They ooh and ah and call it majestic, which is better than dangerous, you suppose. But the animal doesn't care what it's called. It is here because it managed to avoid being a purse. Because someone put up a fence before someone else put up a strip mall. Because in a world built for speed and noise, it still knew how to vanish. You sit on the edge of the boardwalk, legs dangling just a little too far over because even now you still haven't learned. And from the shadows under the dock, something exhales. Not a threat, just a reminder. This whole thing, it's not over. You visit a research center where a man with sun-scorched skin shows you slides of hatchlings. He talks about GPS tracking, about poachers, about eggs stolen and sold to the exotic pet trade. They don't even want to raise them, he says. They just want the idea of one. You imagine that? A prehistoric apex predator turned into a garden ornament. And you wonder who really needs conserving. There are stories now of crocodiles adapting again, living in canals, nesting under highways, hunting in man-made reservoirs. In India, one croc was spotted crossing a toll road at 3 a.m. just because. In Florida, they occasionally show up in golf course ponds. The human response: panic mostly, then news coverage, then sometimes relocation, rarely understanding. Because this is the moment where crocodiles aren't just surviving you anymore, they're surviving your solutions. You walk through the last stretch of boardwalk before the trees reclaim the path. A faded poster flutters on a sign: coexistence is possible. The font is optimistic. The crocodile in the image is smiling. You know better. The real one, half hidden in cattails, motionless as a rumor, doesn't smile. It doesn't need to. It just is. And that's what this section of the story comes down to. You're not preserving the crocodile. It's allowing you to. Because even with all the protections and cameras and drone footage, if it wanted to vanish again, it could. Slip beneath the reeds, nest in a sewer, wait for the next warm epoch. It's not stubborn. It's tactical. And now, for the first time in history, it is not the predator with the upper hand. Its survival depends not on stealth but on spreadsheets, on forms and funding and fragile international agreements. And that, you realize, is the strangest twist of all. Because the crocodile doesn't understand politics, but it's being voted on. You pause at the edge of the lagoon as evening settles in. Crickets take up the rhythm. Somewhere far across the water, a single splash echoes like punctuation at the end of a long, unbroken sentence. The crocodile is still here. For now. You walk now without a path. Just instinct and memory guiding your feet along a meandering river that refuses to be tamed. The signs have disappeared. So have the fences, the warning posts, the polite suggestions to stay a safe distance away. Out here, it's only wind and breath and the faint huff of something heavy sliding through reeds. Stillness wins the race. That's what the crocodile knows. That's what it's always known. You're in a region that once saw wars, maybe still does. The remnants are all around you. A rusted-out truck bed half buried in silt. A boot print too recent to be ancient, and bullet holes in a concrete culvert that the crocodile now uses as a tunnel. The river doesn't care who fought whom. It just keeps flowing. And the crocodile doesn't mourn. It doesn't take sides. When artillery fell, it sank deeper. When tanks crossed the shallows, it blinked unmoved. When soldiers disappeared into the jungle, it simply returned to its sunning rock and stretched. Odd fact, crocodiles have been seen surviving in literal war zones. In Cambodia, during conflicts in the late 20th century, villagers reported crocs occupying abandoned trenches and bomb craters, nesting in spent shell casings, resting beneath hanging ammunition belts like prehistoric ghosts in modern clothes. You sit on a downed tree listening to wind move through papyrus grass like a distant whisper. It sounds almost like laughter, or maybe memory. The crocodile drifts silently nearby, the tip of its snout slicing the water like a knife through old stories. Historians still debate whether the presence of apex predators in post-conflict areas helps restore ecosystems faster. Some argue that they control invasive species. Others say they keep people from coming back too soon. Maybe both are true. Maybe the crocodile is nature's bouncer, turning away the noisy guests until the land can breathe again. You keep walking, careful not to step too loudly. There's no one to impress here, no one to warn you either. But the crocodile has never needed a spotlight. Its power lies in absence, in the spaces between motion. You look at a patch of floating lilies, and for a moment they shift. Just slightly, then settle. That's the whole story right there. Disturbance, adjustment, silence. At the river bend, a fisherman kneels beside his net, patching it with careful hands. You nod as you pass. He doesn't look up, but mutters, "They don't forget." You don't ask who they are. Further ahead, you find a nesting site. Not roped off, not guarded by signs. Just a warm mound of rotting vegetation, eggs buried deep. You crouch beside it listening. No chirps yet, but they'll come. When they do, the mother, maybe just beyond the reeds right now, will respond. She'll carry her babies to the water one by one like she's done for thousands of years. With jaws that could break a skull, she'll cradle life gently between her teeth. She won't cry. She won't explain herself to a camera crew. She'll just do what works. You sit longer than you mean to. Time bends here. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls, maybe a storm, maybe something exploding. You don't flinch. Neither does the crocodile. This is the thing that no one tells you: evolution isn't always about improvement. Sometimes it's about endurance. Sometimes it's about resisting the urge to move. Crocodiles don't race, they don't hustle, they don't multitask, they bask, they ambush, they remember, they wait. You think of all the things this creature has waded through. The rise and fall of empires, the shifting of tectonic plates, the burning of forests, the flooding of deltas, the draining of swamps for shopping plazas. It has seen gods born and forgotten, languages rise like tides and retreat like whispers. It has seen extinction and returned without applause. And when the final predator falls silent, when the satellite signals blink out and the planet exhales its last industrial breath, the crocodile won't write a eulogy. It'll simply slide back into the water, belly low, heart, slow eyes unblinking. You rise from the log. The sun has dipped below the tree line, and the river reflects the darkening sky. The crocodile is there again, still not chasing, still not lunging, just watching. You're part of the landscape now. Not a threat, not a snack, just movement on the horizon. You whisper goodnight and it blinks once. Maybe that's an answer, maybe not. Stillness wins the race. You finally understand what that means. You're standing now at the edge of a place that doesn't quite have a name. It isn't a country, it isn't a date, it isn't even a memory. It's just now the soft overlap of all the moments that came before and everything that refuses to be forgotten. The crocodile is floating in front of you, not moving, not even blinking this time, just there like a dark comma at the end of an impossible sentence. You're not sure how long you've been watching. Could be 5 minutes, could be 500 years. The beast that outweighted time doesn't speak, of course. It doesn't nod or gesture or glow with some magical aura. It just exists in a way that makes your heartbeat feel fast and unnecessary. Your species has changed everything: climates, coastlines, the number of pigeons in city parks, and yet this thing, this quiet horror of muscle and silence remains. You kneel at the water's edge, not to drink, not to test it, just to be closer. The ground is soft with silt and memory. Everything around you is hushed. Even the insects seem reluctant to break the moment. Odd fact, some crocodiles, particularly the saltwater variety, have been recorded traveling across entire oceans. Not always intentionally. Sometimes riding storm surges, other times catching a lucky current. But they survived the journey. No map, no supplies, no shoes, just teeth, instinct, and the patience to go wherever the world pushed them. Historians still debate whether a specific lineage of crocodiles survived the mass extinction that killed the dinosaurs because it could live in both salt and fresh water. Flexibility, they say. A willingness to adapt. But if you ask the crocodile, well, it won't answer. It'll just continue being the thing that adapts by waiting longer than you. You glance behind you. The forest is gone now. Or maybe it never was. The future stretches ahead like a fogged-up mirror: rising seas, flooded cities, glass towers sagging under the weight of optimism. And somewhere beneath those waves, still tucked into the bend of a forgotten canal, the crocodile continues. It doesn't need the news. It doesn't read predictions. It doesn't weep for the Amazon or calculate carbon offsets. It survives in flooded rice paddies, in backwater eddies, in the runoff beneath your suburbs. It's not rebelling against climate change. It's not fighting extinction. It's simply not playing your game. The final truth you feel in your bones now is this: the crocodile's success wasn't in overpowering everything else. It was in resisting the pressure to evolve into something that wasn't true to itself. It knew instinctively that stillness could be a weapon, that endurance could outlast invention, that waiting quietly relentlessly was enough. You think about all the animals that didn't make it, the ones with feathers and flash, the ones with speed, with beauty, with massive brains. They ran, they climbed, they adapted, they panicked. The crocodile. It just sank a little deeper. You rise brushing mud from your knees. The river behind you holds the glow of a sky changing colors. The water shivers. Somewhere far off a bird calls. The crocodile still hasn't moved. You don't say goodbye. You just walk away feeling the weight of all those centuries behind you. The soft splash of footsteps behind you might be your own, might not. And when the last human writes the last line in the last history book, the crocodile won't be reading. It'll be blinking, floating, waiting. And when the wind has scoured the monuments to dust, and the stars shine down on a planet that no longer remembers your name, there in the quiet swirl of a forgotten river, the crocodile will still be. In the quietest corners of Earth, through rising floods and falling empires, through asteroid strikes, ice ages, and industrial revolutions, there exists a creature that never asked to be remembered but always was. The crocodile, the ancient sentinel of the riverbank, has endured everything history could throw at it. It has floated past Pharaohs, outweighted emperors, dodged bullets, bulldozers, and bureaucracy. It has been a god, a monster, a myth, and a misunderstood neighbor. But most importantly, it has been itself unchanged in design, unchanged in purpose, unmatched in patience. While civilizations burned and rebuilt themselves, while humans rebranded the planet in their own image, the crocodile remained just beneath the surface, blinked once, and continued on. It didn't need to evolve to survive. It didn't need to conquer or colonize. It simply needed to stay. And it did, watching silently as the river carried away your best-laid plans, your sharpest tools, your most poetic monuments. Tonight, as you turn off your screen and listen to the hush of your own room somewhere in the world, a crocodile shifts its weight in the mud. Not for you, not for history, but because it's been still long enough. And so the world continues, not with a bang, not with a triumph, but with a soft ripple and the slow breath of something that was never supposed to be forgotten.